Hey everyone, today we're actually going to do a fan requested topic. So for those of you who do watch the videos every time and interact with them and let me know what you want to see, thank you so much. So we're going to do some of the fan requested videos. And so today is active snakes, or basically 5 snakes that will keep you on your toes while interacting with them. So we all know we like to make the joke about ball pythons being pet rocks. Well, in comparison, for all the 5 snakes that we're going to talk about in this video, ball pythons are rocks. So we're going to start with the one that is the most common, the most handleable, the one you'll see probably most often getting into that, and then we'll end with the one that is the craziest, I shouldn't say crazy because it makes it sound like they're bad snakes, but the most high-strung, the most reactive, and honestly ones that I wouldn't even fully be comfortable with yet before I get a little bit more practice with that. So to start us off with, we're going to start with the beauty snakes. So we've talked about it before in the Asian rat snake video, where these guys are beautiful, beautiful snakes, but they're definitely not for the first time pet owner when it comes to a snake. And that is because they're not slow moving. They are very active. They're fairly arboreal. They're long, thin bodied, but agile snakes. So 4 to 6 feet, depending on the different species or the locality of them. So those are the Taiwanese beauties, the Indo-Chinese, the Chinese, and the Ridley eye, or the cave-dwelling rat snakes, which are my favorite of the beauty snakes. I mean, I like the blues, but I really like the cave-dwelling rat snakes, the Ridley eyes. But they're very active hunters. They're very visual. They use their visual acuity for hunting more than, like, say, a python that relies more on sit and wait and the heat and relying on scent. Yeah, they absolutely do use their sense of smell with their forked tongue and Jacobson organ and everything like that, but they're still very visual predators. And so because of that, they're very reactionary when it comes to a lot of movements. So if you're someone who makes kind of a lot of movements, you're not quite sure, or tend to twitch a lot, it can possibly get a reactionary response for them. But when you get them young, and they will be even more so when they're little, but with regular, consistent handling, then they can be great pets. And I've seen a number of them taken to like events and they're just around their shoulder and there weren't any issues caused. So the next one is one that we actually don't talk too much about because they're not actually that commonly kept in the hobby, but they're still a really cool snake, and that is coach whips. So coach whips are one of a couple snakes, at least here in the United States, that are very famous for eating other snakes, specifically venomous rattlesnakes. Those and king snakes, they eat them quite often. And, that's because they're generalists, they're agile, and they can be fairly large snakes. So once again, like every snake on this list, they're all fairly slender bodied, and they can actually achieve quite a length. I think the Easterns are usually a little bit longer, but they can get 7, 8-ish feet long. But they're very slender, very fast moving. And you don't see them a whole lot for a couple of reasons. Number one, other than a few select localities, and now a couple people who really like the species are working with them, we're starting to see some really cool, like, bright colors pop up. They're kind of a sandy brown, plain looking colored snake, and they don't always adjust that well to captivity. They're very reactive. They're on this list, they're probably the most reactive when it comes to, the threat of a predator, i.e. us. That they have a tendency to just kind of bolt immediately. They don't like to quickly strike as readily as a lot of the other snakes on this list. They absolutely 99% of the time want to just go. So if you have one, even in a larger enclosure, which I would absolutely recommend getting the biggest enclosure possible if you want to start working with these animals, is even if it's a large enclosure, they have a tendency to kind of bang around, almost like an Asian water dragon does. Like, we've all seen like the kind of messed up lips and lower jaws of the Asian water dragons because they're so reactive. They'll just kind of bang into stuff because they're scared. So most of the ones we actually see in captivity usually come from field-collected gravid mothers, and clutches are laid accidentally and sold off for usually not a whole lot. But like I said, people are starting to work with them. They're a really cool species because, number one, they're very fast, they're very long, and they're an entirely different animal to work with. Like, working with them is different than so many other animals. And another really cool thing that I probably should have touched on before is the way they hunt. So every single animal on this list is very visual when it comes to there. And that's probably why they're more active, why they move a lot more, where they're so reactionary, is because they're very visual hunters. These guys have a really cool adaptation when it comes to hunting, and that's they will periscope. And so what that is because they're so long-bodied, they will raise up almost a quarter of their body, sometimes more, above like the short or long grass that they're hunting in and actually periscope like a little submarine coming out of the water and look around for prey. And once they key in on one, they just straight go for it really quickly, so that way they avoid the prey item escaping. But Coach Whip's really cool, not really talked about, and that's what's really cool I like about these, doing, because I don't really work with too many of these. In fact, I only have one on this list, but it's really cool to research these things and then share it with you guys while I do this. So, Coach Whips, really cool. They're not really quick to bite. They are definitely a fast-moving reactive snake that, if you're not used to it, they will just kind of go and flip back and come around, and they don't really stop moving ever. So, with that being said, we'll move on to the next one, which is one of the coolest ones, and one day I hope to actually get some of these other than just like handling them every once in a while I'm at a zoo or someone else's house, and that is indigo snakes. So indigo snakes are amazing animals. They're highly intelligent, very fast moving, very large. They're actually the heaviest bodied snake on this list, period. And also kind of like every single list on every animal on here, they're generalists when it comes to eating. So there was a little video a while ago, and I'll see if I can find it to throw it up, of someone on a ranch in southern Texas had a rattlesnake, and they were trying to remove the rattlesnake and not killing it. They were just trying to like shoo it away with a shovel. And then you see this at least 7-foot long giant black Texas indigo snake roll up and just take that diamondback rattlesnake, and then just it takes it, snags it, rolls it up, and then just takes it away out from the fence that it crawled from. It was crazy. And that's the kind of thing that is really cool, to work with this high energy, really crazy snake, to where they're just a really, really cool animal. Then when I say that they're active, I mean it. So there's the Orion Society, who specifically studies the eastern indigos because they're very endangered here in the United States. In fact, they're on a federally protected list to where you can't transport them in between states without special permits from Fish and Wildlife. But they did a study on select individual animals where they found that individuals, specifically males, would travel up to 1 mile a day in search of females and prey in their home range, which is insane. So these guys like to move. So if we ever get one, I'm going to be keeping them in a minimum 6-foot cage, plenty of space. And the other thing, so these guys are Drymarchon, and you've heard me talk about them a little bit in other videos. So Drymarchon, that's the genus, that's the indigos and the Creebos. They're the largest colubrids in the New World, specifically the indigos, the Texas, and the easterns. They're the largest ones in North America. They're heavier bodied, jet black. The Texas indigos kind of have either a red underbelly or a yellow underbelly, yellow-white, and they're really, really cool, and I can't wait to work with them. But that also being said, that with a snake that eats as much as they do, because they have very fast metabolisms for reptiles, specifically with snakes, they will eat a lot. I once heard a story of someone who keeps indigos, and they actually found, and trigger warning, sorry, talking about poop and body parts a little bit, is they actually found a whole mouse ear in an eastern indigo's excrement. So they don't necessarily digest their food super well. But so what that means is you'll be cleaning a lot. So, but that's kind of the trade-off. You get a really cool, really rare, really intelligent, fun, interactive snake, and a lot of poop. But with that being said, they're really, really cool, and I can't wait to work with them. So the next one on the list, I just talked about a little bit, and that is Creebos. So let me show you mine. This, he doesn't have a name. This is our male yellowtail Creebo. And Creebos are really, really cool, although he has this very unnerving habit of outstretching, and you'll probably see him do it once or twice if I'm not careful. He'll kind of outstretch, and then he'll just shoot straight back right past my head. And it's really unnerving a little bit. But, so Creebos, they're in the same genus as the indigos, but these guys on average usually get a little bit longer. They're usually a little bit thinner bodied, a little bit more slender than the indigos, specifically the easterns. And there's basically 3 kinds. There's blacktails, there's unicolors, and then the yellowtail Creebos. So the blacktails are probably the most famous and the most iconic. Basically, it's this guy, only reversed. They're kind of a brownish tan over their whole body, and then they can have close to a jet black solid tail, unlike this yellow one here. This guy, and they typically achieve lengths of 8 to 9 feet with fair regularity. The males are a little bit larger too. Unlike with pythons, where females are a little larger because they have to carry all those huge clutches of eggs. And this one, I think it's more like males, the bigger, the badder, is the more appealing to the females when it comes to these guys. The yellowtail, so with this guy here, is they have that black body with a nice little white, yellow underbelly to this yellow tail. They are generally the longest, and they can achieve lengths of not unheard of 10 feet in length. He was kind of maintenance fed before I got him, so he could be a little bit longer, but he is working on it. And they also evidently are the most high-strung and flighty of the Creebos. So, of course, I did that. But I used to really like the blacktails. I really like them. They had that really cool, like, kind of eyeliner on their faces, but I'm really growing on loving these yellowtails. And then the third is the unicolor. There's a little bit of a debate with the unicolors, whether or not they're their actual own, like, separate subspecies, or whether or not they're just, like, a variant of the blacktails in their range, where because they do overlap, or if they're actual an intergrade between the yellows and the blacks. No one's completely sure, but I think it's probably more likely that they're just kind of a weird variant of the blacktails in general, or if and there are other Creebos as well too. There's like a Mexican Creebo, but either way, those are the three main ones that we see. These guys are really cool, and just like the Indigo Snakes, and as you can see, he hasn't stopped moving. He's looking around. He's not actually doing a whole lot of ton flicks like you see in a lot of pythons and things, but he's always keying up, and I've never actually had him out with all these bright lights and the cameras and stuff, so this is fun for everybody. But you can see how large their eyes are. They are very visual hunters, and Creebos have a tendency to be a little bit more arboreal than the Indigo Snakes. Indigos, they're more ground dwelling. They're a little bit more fossorial because they're looking for a lot of ground rodents, a lot of lizards, a lot of snakes. Creebos, they're also generalists. They'll eat anything. But down in Central and South America, there's a lot of things up in the canopy, so they're going up in there too. And if you guys listen to or check out the podcast with Ian Braylon, we hear a very cool story that actually had me going, oh my gosh, as he's describing it when he found a wild adult male yellowtail Creebo down in the Amazon jungle. So go check that out if you want to hear a really cool story about that, because I was certainly jazzed about that. So I'm going to keep him out because he's doing really, really well for the last one on the list. So what I've always been told by multiple people, that if you ever wanted to start working with hot snakes, specifically elapids, i.e. cobras and taipans, and not to say that I ever plan to, because not really, hots don't do it for me. I think they're pretty and I think they're really cool, but I don't ever want to actually physically work with them more than I have to, other than like rattlesnake relocation. Don't really want to do that, but I've always been told that if you want to work with the elapids and learn how to understand tailing like eastern browns and coastal taipans and things like that, work with Creebos and Indigos, or get a king rat snake. So king rat snakes, the number one on this list, what I would say probably is the most high-strung, flighty, reactive, quick-to-strike snake of this list, of any of these five, the king rat snake. So these guys, they come from Southeast Asia. They're from Taiwan, they're from China, and then there's a third one. I think there's 3 or 4 subspecies in total. I think it's 3. Normally, for a while, we saw a lot of the Taiwanese, but lately we've been seeing a lot of the Chinese king rats. And they do have a couple different color morphs too. I know there's albino Chinese king rats. But these snakes are huge. They don't necessarily dwarf, but they average longer lengths than the Creebos and Indigos. They're usually not as heavy-bodied, specifically the Indigos, or like a large blacktail, or even a large yellowtail, because they can get pretty chunky. He's just a little small, but we're working on that. They're very long, easily 10 feet long, and they can get longer than that. They're not the longest colubrid in the world. I think that goes to, I can't remember their full name, but they call them like the Indian rat snake. And they can get over 12 or 13 feet in length, but they can get over 10 feet easily all the time. They are very thin-bodied, and so we all know about the Texas rat snakes, or the danger noodle with the arms, the sassy snake. Well, these guys shame them. Their posturing and their defensive behavior is honestly a little startling, even for people who understand, appreciate, or even work with snakes. And that's because they're just so much bigger. So you can get like a 6 foot, which is a big Texas or Western rat snake, up about a foot and a half off the ground, and they will make that posture, mouth wide open, and hiss. These guys take it to another level. Because they're so long, they can get 2-3 feet standing up and posturing. They will flatten out. And you can kind of see here, they have keeled scales, but you can see there's a fair bit of like scale separation on them. What they do, and he's doing it a little bit, like they'll kind of puff up their neck. They will actually puff up this whole part of their body and flatten it out and spread those scales so it appears whiter and brighter. And then after that, they will make that iconic S. They'll hiss, they'll have their wide mouth open, and they will strike as a defense. They, once again, like every snake, always going to try to get away, but they're definitely a little bit quicker to strike, specifically young ones or ones that don't get handled with regularity, than pretty much every other snake on this list. Like, I don't actually handle him probably as much as I should, but he's doing just fine for someone who honestly was kept in a tub for a while, and then just my interactions with him just through with small amounts of handling and cleaning. But the king rats, they definitely need work, they need patience, and then learning that skill of what Steve Irwin basically kind of made famous or popular, which was tailing, where he would take the tail end of it and he would rotate his wrist to kind of turn their long spine a little bit to kind of throw them off balance, and then you would sit there and hook it. But they're still really long, so a little dangerous when it comes to messing with like a taipan or something like that. I mean, a bite from a king rat snake, it's colubrid, so you're going to be fine. But still, it doesn't sound like something you really want to get bitten by. But hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I really want to, again, thank a lot of the people who reach out and interact with the videos. Thank you so much for that. Hope you enjoy this. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. Hit me up, jzreptiles@gmail.com. Check out the podcast. Hit up our Patreon to help support us if you can. Thank you so much, and we'll check you next time.